Where am I going? And where did I come from? It could be simple questions, but these are also theological questions. These are existential questions. I remember another trainee in the Southern California who was requested to see a patient who happened to be very close to the family. It's a family friend. It's the mother of one of his friends. They said, "Mom is in the hospital. I want you to see her and pray for her. She found out through me that you are now in your training in becoming a chaplain." So he obliged, knowing that they have strong family relationship, family ties, friendship. So he went to see, let's call her Miss Smith, and let's call the chaplain intern Jesse. So Jesse met Miss Smith. Of course, there was a familiar presence, but Jesse wrote this up and take it to our class as one of his most difficult cases. He said, "I don't know what's going on, but I was having a hard time visiting Miss Smith." So they reviewed the visit. That's what we do. We read it in class. There is the chaplain part and the patient part. And Jesse was so excited to, bring it on. Tell me, where did I, what did go wrong? What did I miss? And sometimes we talk about missed opportunities, the strength and the weaknesses of the chaplain. And Jesse said, "You know what? I'm all in, just bring it in, bring it on, and I'll take whatever criticism you want to, I want to grow, I want to learn, I want to be the best chaplain in the world." So one by one, the cohort responded to the request. So they gave this pretty strong feedback. Lack of intimacy, lack of respect. What kind of language are you using here? It's pretty brutal and honest. And he said, "Oh, I need this. I need this. This is what I need to become a better chaplain." But in the process of reviewing the case, now it has become more meaningful when Jesse started to realize that it is not the skill set that he needed at that moment to grow. His idea of growth is, give me more skill sets after skill sets, because I want to be a better chaplain. The real path to healing was when Jesse realized that there are important questions that he has to face. Who am I in this visit? One of the cohort members asked, "Jesse, can you help us understand why were you struggling in this visit?" And then he stopped talking and thought and said, "You know what? I felt I wasn't worthy." Okay. Can you tell us, why did you feel unworthy? And Jesse said, "I felt like I have to prove something." Okay, prove something to whom? I guess to myself. And then there's the question that really hit him. When did you start feeling unworthy? And he went back to his story. He said, "As a young man, I was incarcerated. And to me, that is a great dishonor to my family, and I feel so ashamed." It is then when he realized that the person that was visiting Miss Smith was the young man who was going to prison. Unworthy. It was then when he realized that Miss Smith was seeing a new person while he was seeing the old one. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So, because of that, Jesus started to play the if game. If I can only have a new role, if I can only have a new set of skill sets, if I can only have this and that, maybe I'll get over some of the pains that I had, especially when I was a broken person. Sometimes the way we cope is to make our own clothing of fig leaves, so we can bury and hide our nakedness. Well, this is our way of forming the truths that we think they're the truths that we believe, but actually they are lies. So today I'd like to talk about the lies we believe and how they influence us. With that, I'd like to start with this idea of, this could be a good symptom. When you feel like you have to prove something, and maybe in a relationship, you are overdoing and overperforming, and you want to stop and think, why? Not the why of flagellation, because sometimes you ask, man, why did I do that? Sometimes what you're saying is, I was not supposed to do that, but I did it, therefore I'm a bad person. The why that I'd like you to engage with is, I wonder why. It's a compassionate why. Instead of proving yourself that you need to be someone else to be acceptable or to be loved and to be respected by others. This proving game is what eating us up and sometimes making us less effective, not only in the ministry, but even in our relationship with our loved ones. Let me take you to Matthew 3:17. This is, I forgot my Bible's in my bag. Thank you very much. That's why I bring my wife with me, because I forget a lot of things. Great, thank you. Matthew 3:17, and I have this on the screen anyway, but this is when Jesus was baptized. And when he was coming out of the water, people who were watching heard God's voice of affirmation. This is my son, whom I love, in whom I'm well pleased. When I encountered this verse, I realized that even at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, the Father has given him wonderful affirmation that would protect him from any lies that Satan would use to deceive him. And I'd like us to talk about that. First one is, this is my son. If Jesus have a big question in his life, this is the answer. Who am I? The beloved son. Okay? Now, the second phrase is, whom I love, this is a reminder for Jesus and for every one of us that our home, we have a place in the Father's heart. That is home. Who am I? A child of God. Where do they come from? I have a place in God's heart. That's home. And where am I going? And this is a very tricky question. This is a question that challenges every single one of us, because it's a question of sense of purpose and significance. Do I matter in this world? Well, as far as the Father is concerned, we do. We don't have to perform anything spectacular to please him. The psalmist says, we were woven and created, and his mind is already there, thinking of how and who we are while we are being conceived by our mother. So these three things here, I'd like to reiterate that this talks about our three basic needs in life, existential needs: our identity, our belonging, and our significance. Our identity, our belonging, and our significance. If we're having a crisis in life, mostly they are going around these three existential questions. You're having identity crisis, it's because sometimes we don't know who we are. Are you having communion crisis or belonging crisis? You don't know if someone is there for you. Where is home? Are we connected? Are we isolated? And the significance crisis: do I matter? Do I have a purpose? Can I deliver? Can I make a difference in people's lives? And Satan knows this. Right after Matthew 3, we know, if you know the Gospel of Matthew, you know what happens in Matthew 4. Right after the baptism, Matthew 4 is when Jesus went to the wilderness, tempted by Satan. But Jesus has this in his heart as a preparation. He keeps this, that I am God's Son, I am love, I am well pleased. My identity is intact, my purpose is clear, and I have a home. Now, I'd like to give you these three things, just to expand it a little bit more. I'd like to connect it to 1 Corinthians 13:13, when Paul summarized one of his most beautiful prose in his writings. It's now abideth faith, hope, and love. These three remains, but the greatest, of course, is love. Now, I have here in the screen, and again, it's just a scrambled kind of thing, but faith, hope, and love, if you think carefully, it speaks about identity, belonging, and significance. Faith is a question of, who am I? Can I believe the goodness? Can I see the goodness in me? Can I see that I am a child of God? Can I see that you are a child of God? I mean, this is faith in terms of human relationship. Sometimes we talk about faith vertically, but there's faith horizontally. Can I trust? Can I exercise my faith and my trust in your goodness? Can you do the same thing in the goodness in me? If this relationship is hurt, if I lost my confidence in the goodness of, in seeing the goodness in you and seeing the goodness in me, I would be so anxious, so protective, hypervigilant. So that's what's missing. Now, if you think about love, which is the idea of belonging and connectedness, Jesus was receiving this at the cross when the Father was saying, whom I love. So faith, who am I? Can I see the goodness in each one of us? Love is, do I have a place in God's heart? And hope, our purpose, our significance. Can I deliver? Can I make a difference in this world? So these three are very strong throughout the scriptures, are strong elements or core that would remind us of our own being. So, this is what Jesus was keeping when he was fresh from the baptism, going to the wilderness. Now, Satan's attack is this. Satan's idea is, all I have to do is to destroy either one of these three, the sense of identity, sense of belonging, or sense of significance, by just introducing this if game, if you can prove it. And I think you can predict, because you know what happens in Matthew 4. As far as Matthew, 1 Corinthians 13 goes, let me just highlight the fact that if Satan would destroy something in the area of hope, it would be a belief that we no longer matter in this world, that people don't see that we are significant, and that we can no longer trust. The confidence that we could deliver. You know what? This is part of my woundedness growing up. I was struggling with the fact that, do people really believe in me? I was the only boy, and I have 5 sisters. And in our culture and society growing up, I was given this idea that I need to matter if I need to be the man of the family. So I was seeing my sisters, according to the culture, because you're the only boy, you will be the man, especially when the father is away. But I have 3 older sisters and 2 younger sisters, and my 3 older sisters don't see me as the man. So I have to prove it. And it has become a definition of my life. Keep on proving it until maybe trying to get their respect, that maybe someday you could see me as the man of the house. So this is the if game in my life, the prove it game. And I kept on fighting the lies that says I don't matter, I won't make a difference. And I was always wondering if people see, that I do matter. And sometimes I resigned in the fact that maybe I'm not that important in this world. So these are the 3 things that are, the person with a wounded hope would struggle. First is, I need to be competent to matter, or I must be spectacular to matter, or maybe I can just hide behind tranquility because I'm not that important at all. What if the area of love that is wounded? And by the way, I call this God's DNA, okay? Faith, hope, and love in us, because nobody taught us how to love, how to trust, and how to hope. You don't have to teach a child how to love, trust, and hope. This is the traits that you can see that we are created in God's image. But what if this is wounded? These are the kinds of beliefs we tend to take, okay? Others don't love me the way I love them. Therefore, this is about a wounded connection, okay? Therefore, I must have exit doors in a relationship. Because I don't want to experience pain. And the idea of experiencing pain is the lack of confidence that people can love them the way they do. So that's one way in responding in this woundedness. What if the deep wound is more on your relationship with self? You have embraced a false belief that says you are unlovable. No one can love you. Especially if you're so weak. There are many people, especially when they were abused as a child, and therefore they see themselves as unlovable because of the abuse. And then they engage in the if game. And the if game is, if I was only strong, if I was only powerful, if I only have the courage to say no, to say stop, maybe I would be more lovable today. So they try to transfer the power that they didn't have when they were young to what they could do now that they are in control. And sometimes they go the extra mile in overpowering and controlling the situation, themselves, and those who love them, and those who they love. Because this is the idea that says, if I can only be this, if I can only be in control, if I can only be powerful, maybe the one that I had in the past will not happen to me. What if the woundedness of this love relationship is with self and others? Then we'll start losing our confidence in love in itself. Then we'll have this idea that maybe if I'm someone else, I will be more lovable. If I can be a role, maybe a president of a hospital or an organization or the country, or a leader in a community, or a pastor in the church, or a deacon and elder, or maybe if I have a wonderful car to drive, a house to show, and these different kinds of persona and appearances, they become the idea of a person thinking, I would be loved if I can have this number of things, if I can have this role, if I can have this position, if I can have this status. This is an image of the broken love. What if our ability to exercise faith is the one that's wounded? What would that look like? Then we'll have this belief that says, okay, I cannot judge or I cannot trust others' judgment. Why? Because if my relationship with others is wounded, then I have this belief that they're here to get me, that they're here to condemn me, to judge me. How to cope is this way. If I can do things perfectly, then the criticism is not that, hurtful. Because I know I did my best. I know I did something right. That's how I protect myself. So therefore, there are a group of people who tend to be perfectionists, not necessarily to give glory to God but to protect themselves from criticism. What if my relationship with myself is the one that's wounded? What if growing up, all I hear is, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're not going to amount into something. I start believing in that I no longer see the goodness in myself. And there's what's going to happen. Then I must be good. I must be virtuous. Maybe I can start helping others. Maybe, and there are many people going to the medical field, going to pastoral work, going to social work, because they are needed. And they form a certain addiction with what they do, because it feels good. If you need me, then I must be good. But maybe it's a symptom of a broken trust with self. But what if my relationship with myself and others is, in terms of faith, is wounded? If I can no longer see the goodness in me and the goodness in you, where will I go? I'm going to look for certainty, for strong stability. Because if I can trust myself, and if I can trust you, where would I go? We have many people coming to church because church is a picture of stability and certainty. The scripture can be a picture of certainty. Is it in the Bible? I'm not going to believe it's not in the Bible. And sometimes, and this is why Jesus was saying to the Pharisees, you search the scriptures because you think it's not a declaration. It's actually an invitation to reflect on their relationship with the scriptures. You search the scriptures because you think you have eternal life, but the scripture has been showing you that I'm the Messiah and you miss it. That's what Jesus was saying. Because there is a strong relationship with certainty, because it makes them feel safe. That's when the scriptures become a symbol like a church. And sometimes, an army is a strong image of certainty to many young people. They have a chaotic life. They go to the military, and then they feel like it's their safety net. And sometimes people who went astray would find prison to be a symbol of certainty. And some people go to different kinds of gangs or fraternity or organization, or maybe being part of an elite group. Relationship with certainty. If I can only find stability and certainty, then maybe I would be valued. Now, these three I'm just presenting this to you because Satan has been very successful in playing this if game with us, disprove it kind of game with us. But going back to the wilderness, Satan tried to give it a shot, to invite Jesus to engage in this kind of temptation. So, in Matthew 4, you remember? 3 temptations, but I'm not going to present to you the chronological presentation of Satan in his temptation. The first temptation as we know it is turning stones to bread. And the second temptation as we know it is when, Jesus was invited to cast himself down and so that the angels can catch him. And the final temptation is, just to bow down and I'll give everything to you. As if that is, it's quite meaningful, the chronology. But if we will try to understand what Satan was trying to do from the context and lens of if game or prove it game, this is actually his question. If you are the Son of God. And he used this 2 out of 3. Remember? If you are, because there is as far as Satan's concerned, there is a power in inviting people to be fascinated with something that is not at the moment. From the very beginning, Adam and Eve, especially Eve in the account, Genesis account, Satan or the serpent was giving this idea. The if idea that what happens if you eat this? Do you know that you would be like God? What? Don't you want to be that? What if you're there? This is a big if. And Satan was using this if as far as Jesus is concerned. We know that this is a lie. The idea that identity has to be earned. We know that, and Jesus knows that. And I'm glad that in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, this was the Father's affirmation. Don't forget, you are my son. That's your identity. Friends, that's our identity. We are God's children. You are a child of the King. So, I just want to emphasize that our identity comes from our relationship with God. We are God's children. And that can't be bought or earned. And it shouldn't be used to oppress others. And without it, we shouldn't feel powerless or oppressed. Because if we yield to Satan's temptation and made it our philosophy in life, I'm somebody if I possess something. I'm somebody if I can turn bread and stones to bread. Or in our term, if I can feed more people than anyone else. If I am more influential than anyone else. If, many ifs. Then I'm building a hierarchy of oppression. Because if I'm the one who has no bread, and then I have to depend on someone who can provide me that bread. If that is the definition of who am I, then I am doomed. So brothers and sisters, again, let us remember that our identity comes from being a child of God. Amen. Line number 2, as far as Jesus' temptation is concerned, is the idea that love thrives in certainty. So in the temptation number 2, Satan said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge over you. In other words, can you demonstrate certainty? Because without certainty, why do we believe? Now, it would be a good picture. It could be, in fact, it could be spectacular, to see Jesus falling, and then all of a sudden, here are the angels. It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a beautiful picture. What's wrong with that? But Jesus doesn't want to give us the idea that our relationship with God ends on certainty. Actually, faith thrives in uncertainty, not uncertainty. Actually, the opposite of faith is settling with certainty. Abraham, the father of faith, he keeps on journeying and journeying without knowing where he goes. It's very uncertain, because that's how God nurtured faith. You're having your own journey in life. You're having your own walks in the valley of the shadow of death. Because that's the only way to nurture faith. That's the only way to nurture a strong love beyond certainty. And sometimes you are looking for shortcuts. You know, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. We want to shoot right away to, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, without going through the valley of the shadow of death. If we can only rewrite that psalm, I think that's how we would rewrite it. Forget about the valley of the shadow of death, because it's full of uncertainty. Friends, there's no shortcut in developing love and faith and hope. The lie says we have to prove God is certain to keep us safe. So let me emphasize this. Love shines best in the darkest hour, at the edge of the unknown, and in the depth of our uncertainty and isolation. When Jesus was hanging on the cross, he understands this sense of isolation. And sometimes people don't want to read that because they don't know what meaning to get from, actually this was in Psalm 22 when Jesus was announcing this prayer, proclaiming this prayer on the cross. Why hast thou forsaken me? Daddy, Daddy. It's actually Abba, Daddy. It's an expression of an intimate relationship. Daddy, Daddy, why hast thou forsaken me? And sometimes people would just focus on, why did Jesus pray this prayer? Why hast thou forsaken me? Forgetting the fact that there is an endearment in that experience. Daddy, Daddy. The intimacy is shining even in the darkest hour. And finally, friends, number 3, lie that Satan would like to, instill in us is that if you want to be significant, then prove it. That requires evidence. So going back to the first temptation, I'm not going to highlight the word if, but I'm going to highlight the spectacular proof that is needed for Jesus to be called the Son of God. That would be spectacular. Stone turning to bread. Do you know that Jesus somehow, along this line, made this wonderful magic? Multiplying bread, fish and bread, in John 6. Right? And the people love it. 5,000 men, excluding women and children, were fed through these 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. You know what happened next? Jesus disappeared. But the people were looking for Jesus. They crossed the Sea of Tiberias because they heard Jesus was across the sea. Crossing Tiberias, and these many people, abandoning their activities and duties in life just to find Jesus. And if we are living today, and if this happens today, we would see this as a wonderful phenomenon of following Jesus wherever Jesus goes. But if you go to John 6, when the people finally found Jesus, they were saying, Jesus, where have you been? We've been looking for you. Come, do the magic again. Feed us bread. Do it again, do it again. And all the people were clamoring. Yes, we crossed the sea because of that. You go back to John 6 and Jesus said, sorry, I'm not going to do that. If you're looking for bread, then you have me. I'm the living bread. And the people were saying, no, Not you, the magic. The magic, the thing that has proven that you are the Messiah. Feeding us again. With only maybe 5 loaves again and 2 fish. Do it again. And there was a back and forth persuasion and denial between Jesus and the people. Until finally, one by one, were so disappointed, leaving Jesus, that even Jesus asked his disciples, are you going to leave me as well? But friends, there is power in a spectacular way of proving who we are. There is power in making, in being unique and special, in defeating ordinary. But Jesus is not feeding people because of spectacular way of proving who he was. Jesus was just moved with compassion. That's why he fed the people, nothing more, nothing less. And if you want Jesus to keep on making miracles to prove who he is, then we're putting Jesus in the test tube. And I think we will have this discussion during the prayer. I mean, prayer is power. But sometimes we're thinking of using prayer as a tool to prove that we have this strong relationship with Jesus. So again, Satan is planting these seeds in us. You want to be significant? You have to prove it with strong evidence. So let me just highlight this, that the measure of our worth comes from God's view, not from our desire for recognition. To be truly significant is to embrace the person God intended us to become, regardless of societal expectations. That's why, if there are people who are in danger of blinding themselves, there are the people who are blessed and gifted with power, with position, with virtues, with service. We have to be so cautious with the gift that we have. I just want to highlight one thing here. For those who are in the ministry, the serving, whether you are serving through your daily work, to your profession, or to your ministry, if you have this power, keep this in mind. The difference between those who are in power and those who don't have power could be seen in Beatitudes. When Jesus met the poor people, when he was giving the sermon at the Mount, he saw this, I think if there is 8 classes of society, those who are on the bottom, they are there. People who are neglected in the society. Maybe nowadays, people who are in the streets, who are abandoned and cast out. And Jesus said, those who are here, who are experiencing poverty. And Matthew was very kind in his language because he's trying to please and preach to the middle class people in his time, his kind. Luke says, blessed are the poor, but Matthew says, blessed are the poor in spirit. But he's talking about these poor people. And he heard this from Jesus. Why they are blessed, why they are happy. Because theirs the kingdom of heaven. They don't have anything to prove. But when Nicodemus was going to see Jesus, what did Jesus say? When the rich young ruler came to Jesus, what did Jesus say? Jesus said, unless you be converted like a child, or unless you be born again, or to the rich young ruler, unless you give everything away. Meaning, the difference between those who are in poverty and those who are given responsibility and gifts. Those who are in poverty, all they have to do is open their eyes to see God's kingdom. But those who are entrusted with power and gift and service, they have to die daily, just like what Paul said, so that they can start seeing what God has intended for them. So brothers and sisters, just to sum it up, I'd like to bring us all back to the cross. When Jesus was hanging on the cross, this is the last chance of Satan to maybe put a mar on Jesus' dying body, but not just the body, but maybe even his spirit and his emotions. He used the crowd to say, if you are the Son of God, rescue yourself. That's a big if. Even at the cross, there is still this temptation, tempting Jesus to do one thing that would finally, brothers and sisters, that would finally, for Jesus to yield and give in to this if game. But because Jesus was assured that he is the Son, that he is the beloved one, and God was well pleased, Jesus has no longer have any time to even yield to Satan's temptation, because he knows in his heart what God said to him, especially when he was baptized in Matthew 3:17. He has the strong connection with God, the belonging. He has a strong awareness of who he is, the Son of God, and that he knows that he has a purpose in this world. So brothers and sisters, to sum things up, let us know that we are God's children, his beloved. And he's pleased with us already. You don't have to prove to make God happy about who you are. Okay? Let us not allow anyone to distort this essential truth that God has given us. May God bless us all.